On today's podcast, I'm really excited to welcome Stuart Grant. As the highest rated web designer on Readsy, Stuart Grant brings a wealth of expertise from over a decade in the publishing industry, having created more than 300 author websites. Stu has spoken at notable events like the Self Publishing Show in London and Author Nation in Las Vegas, and has shared his expertise on countless podcasts and conferences. He leads a digital agency laser focused on author success from Norfolk in the UK, where he lives with his sassy 6-year-old daughter, mad dog, and wonderful wife. Welcome, Stu, to the podcast. Welcome, Stu Grant from Digital Authors Toolkit. Thanks so much for joining me on the podcast.
Oh, thanks so much. I've heard the podcast. It's great. It's a pleasure to be here. I love having a chat. And obviously, Isabella, you and I know each other a little bit from various conferences that we've connected at. And yeah, thrilled to be here. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. I love the background. Can just about make out the Barbie dream house, can't we?
Yeah, I've got the Barbie 6-year-old daughter dream house, and I've got the foliage that my wife has obviously put up. And then I've got my tiny little space of the house, which is my book cabinet there, which you'll never read. So yeah, that's my view.
Excellent. So, Stu, you are the man behind Digital Authors Toolkit. For listeners who have not come across you before, do you want to just introduce us to you and what you do?
Sure. So it's a digital agency. I'm based in Norwich in the UK, which is in Norfolk on the sort of east coast of England. And I've been running now for about 10 years actually as sort of as a company, but really kind of accelerated all of that in the last 5. So we basically, our core product is author websites. So that is, we're very laser focused, but that is what we do. We build author websites, and we've built about 350 now in the last few years. So we've been through everything, seen everything. We've made websites for every, format and genre you can possibly imagine. We are offering other services as well. So we've branched into animated covers and some augmented reality covers as well. And we've got other things in the pipeline. So yeah, looking to grow, but just fundamentally working with authors from all over the world on building their online presence.
So, talk us through, how did you get here then? How did you become a web designer for authors specifically? What was the
Yeah,
journey here?
I'm not really sure and wish I'd made a different choice. No, it's great. So yeah, it all happened a bit, as is with all of my life. I've pivoted quite a lot into different things. I was a teacher, lecturer for 7 years. I was a DJ on radio for 25. I've done loads of stuff. But to get here, I left London. I was running radio stations in London, and I thought, I don't want to do this anymore. London was too busy and blah, blah, blah. So I thought, I'm going to come home and set up my own business. And I love tech and digital. So I started making mobile apps. And my marketing plan was to approach big people in areas that I could find and say, do you want a free mobile app, with the idea that they would then cascade that down to their followers. And I don't know how, but I happened to come across Mark Dawson, who at the time was just having it away in the self-publishing space. And he agreed, he wanted an app, so I built him one. And then they were doing self-publishing formula stuff, and they realized I was a bit techie, so they asked me to do a few bits here and there in the background for the podcast and what have you. And then I think Mark, first of all, asked me to make a little mini website for him. And I thought, oh, this is fun. And then I thought, hold on a minute, this might be something else. So I then kicked away the mobile apps and just concentrated on helping authors to create that space online, some of which, the ones I'd seen were a bit shabby. And I thought, I can help here. So that was kind of what brought me here. And I loved it. I love the community. Some of the authors are interesting, but aren't we all? So, it's been great fun. It's been a really good experience for the last few years. So that's kind of how I got here.
Yeah. Amazing. And you've gone from strength to strength. So you mentioned that you've worked with all different kinds of genres, different kinds of authors. Are there any particular genres that you prefer to work with, or is it just a happy mixture?
Is this about the actual authors themselves or the genre? No, I really love making sci-fi websites, but that's just because my taste is, I'm into sci-fi. I love making that kind of immersive experience on the website with images and space and tech. But, like I said, we've made romance, we've made comedy, we've made children's. Children's is also fun, especially having a little one myself, 6 years old. I'm kind of knee deep in children's books and, you know, that experience. So I can kind of take some of that and apply it to the designs that we create. So yeah, probably sci-fi is the one I really, and thrillers. I mean, they're quite atmospheric and you can get some really interesting kind of design around smoke and darkness and shadows and all of that in the design for the website. So yeah, anything that kind of allows me to play a little bit, I suppose, because I'm not a cookie cutter kind of book on white background type designer. I like to create an atmosphere and a kind of experience for the user. So
Yeah.
anything that allows me to do that is fun.
Hmm. So I watched a talk that you gave at the Island Publishing Show recently, and I
Thanks.
loved, I mean, there was so much kind of cool stuff that felt like it was coming at us from the future a little bit, but I know it's here now, like it's closer than we think. So talk to me about the kind of the tech, the AI kind of things that you're working on now and bringing to authors.
Yeah, so I mean, like I say, I've always tried to be across the incoming stuff and ahead of the game. And one of the things that I've seen for a lot of years, and I've always been fascinated by, is augmented reality. And I did a bit of a demo at the Ireland. I did it with an accent there. Did you notice? I don't know why. The Ireland publishing show. But yeah, so the augmented reality is quite difficult to explain. But if you haven't seen it already, you will soon because, you know, it's all over Amazon. So you can look at a product and it says, do you want to see this chair in your lounge, you know, and you sort of hold your camera up and as if by magic it makes the chair appear and you can see what it looks like. And that's kind of how it's coming through at a rate, you know, it is at a pace. But there's all kinds of other applications. Obviously, you've got the kind of air glasses that Apple have produced where you're actually immersively in an environment and you can literally look around and see what's behind you and in front of you, which I think is also an interesting concept for the authors being able to create the worlds that they're writing. And one of the exciting things that I showed at the Irish show was the idea that you can turn the front cover of your book, as much as anything else, into an actual video or gallery. So in the demo, you know, you scan the QR code, then you scan the book cover, and up pops the author saying, "Hi, thanks for reading my book. It's great to have you here," or whatever. You know, if you want to sign up for my mailing list, you can at, you know, imthegreatestauthor.com. And it just turns the product of the book into such a more interesting offering
Mm,
because
mm,
it interacts with the user in a way that we've never really seen, you know, up until this
mm,
point. And I
mm.
do think it's got some real interest points for authors. I think, you know, you can do things like have galleries of places that you're writing about inside the book. You scan the page, you know, and it shows you, I don't know, 5 pictures of Paris or wherever the characters are going. And of
Mm,
course, they don't have to be real photos because you could now create them with AI. So
mm.
combining all the stuff that's coming in, I think the augmented reality space is going to be something which we see happen, you
Yeah.
know, not just in books, but in all kinds of places and ways. You know, if you go to a, I don't know, a conference for coaching or whatever, you might be scanning one of these things, you know, you
Yeah.
scan it and up pops the coach and says, "Hi, you know, whatever, whatever."
Mhm.
So yeah, the applications for it are immense, but I do think, and I always try and apply what I'm learning to authors, and I think it does have an interesting place for authors going forward. So that was the augmented reality side of things. I think at the show I also did a little demo with James is with the Alexa. So, you know, being able to say, "Hey Alexa, tell me about XYZ author." And Alexa then gives you a list of facts, details, book summaries, where the books are available. So again, you know, it's not necessarily fundamental to your success, but it's just another access point for readers to find you. And you know, if they want a sudden list of your books in order, they can just ask Alexa. I mean, you know, that does happen. People think, "Oh, which order am I reading these in?"
Yeah.
You know, and they can just
Yeah.
say, "Alexa, tell me about author James Blatch or whoever." So
Mm,
yeah, that's really exciting for me, and that's very low cost as well. It doesn't cost an awful lot to produce. So there's all
mm.
those kind of bits. So yeah, I'm just seeing a world where there's all these touch points for authors to be, you know, beyond the sort of traditional bookmark.
Yes. It's so exciting. And I know some authors are going to be thinking, "Oh my God, this is all way too much technology for me." But
Okay.
the fact is they don't have to learn how to put it all together, do they? You can put all that together and it's there and it's working for them. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways to do this stuff, and obviously, you know, like any of us, you know, I can't decorate for toffee, so I hire a decorator to do it for me, you know. So, and it's the same. If you don't know how to create an Alexa app or whatever it is, then you find someone who can, you know. And like you said, this is not fundamental. This is not stuff I'm saying must be done. These are just things that might be of interest going forward in the future. Nobody's got to feel like they've got to run out and create augmented reality covers, but you might want to, just so you know it's there, really.
Yeah. So typically, when an author comes to you kind of asking for a website, or might they also come and say, I've got a website, but I don't like it, or it's not actually working for me, it's not bringing me any readers? How does that begin, that process?
Yeah, both of those things happen. So I get authors who've got, oh, my auntie's hairdresser's best friend's cousin made this for me, for £5. What do you think? Always an interesting question. Diplomacy suddenly kicks in. Oh, yes, they've done a really good job of trying to make a website for you. But that's just the way it is. And other people don't have one at all, and they're like, I've got no idea what I'm doing. I've written a couple of books, I've got the covers, help me. So that's fine too. And then you've actually also got the other end of the spectrum. I'm in discussions with a lady at the moment who's got 65 books, I think it is. So
Wow.
she's already got a website, but wants a new one, wants it
Mm,
refreshed and rebuilt, whatever. So,
mm,
that's an epic job with
mm,
65 books, because you're
mm,
managing 65 covers, links, buy now buttons, audio books, you name it. It's all folded in.
mm,
There's a lot of
mm.
content to manage then,
Yeah.
which obviously dictates how much it's going to be as well.
Yes.
So yeah, there's authors in all kinds of different positions, but we can help all of them. And we've seen people that are so technically challenged that they don't know how to turn their computer on, right the way through from people that have built a website but don't want to continue doing it for whatever reason. It takes all sorts, and there is all sorts out there, but that's fine.
In terms of, because I know you also touched on this in the talk that I watched, because I often get questions from authors, when it comes to actually where are they selling their books? Should they be doing selling through the website? I've worked with lots of authors who were thinking that perhaps that's something they should be looking at, or they're not sure what to do or how to approach it. What's your kind of advice when that comes up?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting kind of couple of years, really, because it all kind of came out of nowhere a few years ago with people like Joanna Penn, particularly, and others saying, oh, sell direct, sell direct, sell direct. And of course, lots of people jumped on that and thought, oh, I must sell direct, and felt like they should. And I think that happens quite a lot in the community. Somebody says, I'm doing this, and everyone else thinks, oh, I should do that too.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily follow, actually. And what I've found is that selling direct is brilliant. If you've got a huge community and they're passionate about your products and they want to buy your books, then that's great. And you can say, my books are now for sale and I'll make a little bit more money if you buy it through me. And readers will do that. They will act on it. The problem is, if you haven't got that community in the first place, you're kind of making this website, which is all very well and good. Nobody knows it's there until you start shouting about it. And then you say, my books are for sale on it. Well, they don't know you're there for a start. Secondly, they don't know you enough to maybe even want to put their payment details into your website because they don't trust it yet. So the problem is that you have to drive all the traffic yourself. And that is a problem because
Yeah.
people have enough trouble driving traffic to a website that's just a portfolio rather than a sales machine. You start adding in the fact that you're paying extra to have your book actually on a platform that you can sell it on, because that costs you more. I was looking this morning actually at Shopify.
Mm.
Their minimum payment is £25 a month. So you've got to make £25
Yeah.
a month,
Yes.
before you've even broke even
Yeah.
on selling books.
Yeah.
So you've
Yeah.
got to be prepared for that. You've got to be prepared to put the effort in and work hard to sell books so you do actually make any sort of profit. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. It's great if you can do it and you've got the audience and you've got the time to market the website, etc.
Mm.
But my actual advice to most authors that come to me at this point is, look, just stick with Amazon to start with, unless it's a political decision. Obviously, you can't argue with that. But people that are kind of just starting out and think they've got to do these things, I'm always like, no, just learn Amazon for even just 6 months to a year. Get some bestseller tags, get some nice reviews, learn your craft. And then once you've got that audience, maybe release book one again or book two as a physical copy and see if people want to buy it. And that's my kind of gentle, not prescriptive
Yeah.
position
Yeah.
on. And I have been accused of telling people not to sell direct. That's
Mm.
not my intention at all. But just from my experience, and I've seen a couple of authors add it to their websites and a couple of others take it away. So it
Yes.
is a balanced view.
Yeah. And I think that, the point you raised there, in amongst that is so important. And I feel like authors lose sight of this, is marketing your website. Once you've got a website, how are people going to know that it's there? Like you said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is a stumbling block because
Mm,
people either don't know or don't have the time or hadn't thought about it. You know,
mm,
the amount of people that the authors that they say, "Oh, I don't want it to go live today because I don't want anyone to find it." I'm like, with respect, this ain't going to get found until you start making some noise about it. It
yeah.
doesn't work like that. And actually, if you switch a website on, it can take Google 6 weeks to 6 months to actually register that website and actually put it live. So
Right.
that's the other
Right.
question that comes up a lot. When should I have my website? You know, get it up as soon as you can so that
Mm,
Google knows it's there. Don't wait until you launch your book. That's way too late, as I'm sure you probably know, and tell them too. But
mm.
yes, it is always a question. When should I do it? What's the order of things? You know, but, and again,
Yes.
my advice is always just get it done as quick as
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah. And that's a brilliant point about how long it takes Google to register these things. And do you work on SEO a lot with authors as well? Is that
Yeah,
part of?
so when we deliver the website, actually at the end, it's already done. So
Mm,
we
mm,
fill in, and this is something I'm going to share a bit more as this year goes on podcasts and things. I'm going to help a bit more with SEO because it is something that I didn't even know about really, you know, and it's something
mm,
I've come to learn.
mm,
So a simple example is if you put your book cover on your website and it still says, you know, 1279345.jpg. Google will, well, it will ignore it. It doesn't know what that is. It doesn't know what it means. It can't read images.
mm.
So you have to label this stuff
Right.
correctly, even
Right.
if it's not a book, even if it's your logo or it might be a headshot. It has to say
Mm,
whatever it
mm,
actually is.
mm,
And
mm.
ChatGPT can do this. You can upload an image and ask it for an alt text kind of description. And the other reason why alt text is so fundamentally important as well is because that's what gets read out by screen readers for partially
Partially
sighted
sighted.
or, you know,
Yeah.
or blind
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So, you know, you need that detail in there, not only for search engine optimization, but also for that kind of thing. And if you look on Google, you know, when you do a search, you can see that the results are you get that blue line, which is called the title tag, which is the link to click on. And then you get the bit underneath that, which is called the metadata, which is what tells the user what to expect when they click on that link. And that's
Right.
how the structure works. So you've got to
Mm,
make sure that in the back end of your website, you've organized all that. Otherwise, Google will just either make it up and get it wrong, or it just won't put it on their search responses. So
mm.
yes, it is really important. And I think there was a funny story about, you know, how do you bury a body? Put it on page 2 of Google because no one ever looks at it. And it's true,
Yeah.
you know, if
Yeah.
you want success, you have to be ranked at some level on these search engines. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And my point was that we set it all
Mm,
up, we did all of that
mm,
as a setup,
mm.
really. And then I showed them how to do it so that when people add a new book cover, they know what to write in the right
Right.
place.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, such valuable tips because I think still many of us who put websites up don't, we look at how does it look to the end user, but we're not thinking about behind the scenes that it also should look right there as well.
Yeah, and it
Mm,
is an art, it is a
mm,
science. And, you know, even things like if you've done any work with websites, you'll know that you can choose things like what's called a heading one or an H1 when you're choosing the
mm,
type of
mm.
text that you put. It was a long time coming that I didn't even realize that the first thing that Google does when it ranks a website or looks at a website is it looks for the H1 on the website to tell it what that website's about. So if I had a website and it had Stuart Grant, that should be an H1. Doesn't mean it's any particular size or shape. It just means the code in the background says this is an H1. So when Google lands there, it says, okay, this website's all about Stuart Grant. So if anyone ever Googles the word Stuart Grant, oh, there's a website over here that says it's all about that. So I'll serve that website to that
Right.
person. So
Right.
even that, you know, the
Mm.
right type of text is really important,
Yes.
and it
Yeah.
can be a bit of a minefield, and it used to turn me right off. You know, it's like spreadsheets, like, nah, I don't want to know, you know, SEO. And I'd be like, click, I'm not interested. But
Yeah.
actually, the more I've got into it, the more I found it's actually not as bad as I thought,
Mm,
and it's really
mm.
important.
Yeah. Today's podcast episode is kindly sponsored by Digital Authors Toolkit, world-class author websites that will grow your audience and sell your books. Digital Authors Toolkit create animated covers and book trailers too. And I've seen firsthand how amazing the AI effects that they use can be to enhance authors' books and brands. You can go ahead and get a quote now for your own author website at digitalauthorstoolkit.com. Some really golden tips there. So we're urging anyone listening to go and check your headings and check your image labels and everything else that's, yeah.
Absolutely. And oftentimes it doesn't actually take that long either, unless you've
Mm.
got 60 books, obviously. But if you've only got really a couple of images and a few book covers, you can actually do this fairly swiftly, or
Yes.
just check with your web designer to make sure it's already been done, because there's lots of websites out there that it hasn't. And if it does say .jpeg or .png at the end of any of your images, they will not get found. That
Yeah.
is as simple as
Right.
that.
Right.
So at least make sure it doesn't say that.
Very brilliant advice. So, when it comes to author websites, then, what would you say are the kind of key things that are going to make the difference between a successful website and an unsuccessful website? How would you kind of summarize that?
My concept is based around making it interactive and immersive and
Mm,
interesting.
mm,
I think readers are certainly, a certain age of reader certainly is expecting, when we look at our phones, things move, they do things, you've got a lot of video, so there's an expectation of that sort of culture,
yeah.
I think, when you land on anything. So yeah, I think those kind of design concepts are really important. I mean, the two priorities for any
Mm,
website
mm,
is to gather emails. That's
right.
the first thing that you want to have on your website, something that says, sign up here, you'll get a free book or a free chapter or a free whatever, and you go onto my email list and I can email you as a newsletter. That's the first thing. The
Mm,
second thing is there should obviously be, well, two other things really: information about you as an author. And I think authors often underestimate how interested readers are in that information. They
yes.
send me this like 4-line paragraph, grew up in wherever, went to
Yeah.
school at blah blah blah, and I've got 6 dogs. Tell
Yes.
me more, tell me a bit,
Yes.
because I'm here as a reader wanting to know. So don't be afraid to write a substantial amount of information about yourself, with even some photos, if that's,
Yeah.
obviously it's a bit more difficult if you're using a pen name, but you get the idea. So yeah, that's one thing. And then the last thing really that's fundamental to it is just having easily visible buttons to buy the book, whether that goes through to Amazon or wherever, but just make it clear this is the book. And that's the architecture to it. This is the book. This is maybe a blurb for it or a small chunk of it or whatever. And then if you like all that, here's the button to buy it.
Mm,
That's the kind of path that I try and take the reader on, or the user on.
mm,
So yeah, as long as you've got those things in place and it looks pretty and
mm.
it's mobile optimized, I mean, that's a bit of an old-fashioned thing to say now because most are, but I still come across quite a few websites that aren't optimized for mobile. You ain't gonna have success if you're not. And again, Google won't rank your website if it's not optimized for mobile. So it's not just a case of actually
Right.
being usable.
Yes.
Google will actually penalize you.
Mm.
Some people don't know. So,
Yeah.
and make sure that's definitely in place, that it looks great on all devices. That's the aim. It's very
Mm,
easy to do that now, because a lot of these web builders, they have one screen where you look at the desktop and another screen where you look at the mobile, and you can make changes to it to your heart's content to make it look
mm,
pretty.
mm. Brilliant. Well, thank you for sharing all of that advice, Stu. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people listening that will be furiously taking notes from all of that. If authors want to come and speak to you about websites, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, there's a couple of ways to find me. If you're a Readsy user, you can find me on Readsy. I've got a profile on the website designers section of Readsy, and I think it's readsy.com/Stuart Grant or something.
Mhm.
Or alternatively, probably better in some respects for us, is to go through digitalauthourstoolkit.com. So that's my direct website. There's a button at the top that says get a quote. And if you want to fill that in, I can always come back to you with information about, how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take,
Mm,
and
mm.
just tell me a bit about you.
Yeah, brilliant. And so, what's next for you in your business? Can we see you at any more conferences coming up?
Yeah, well, there's lots of plans on the horizon, actually. That's my trouble, though. I'm a bit of a kleptomaniac when it comes to pretty things. I'm like, oh, this interesting bit of tech over here and this over here. So I've got a few bits and pieces that I'd like to launch and investigate.
Mm,
So lots of plans other than just keep on building what I hope is
Yes.
world-class websites. And then, yes, I'm going to be in London at the self-publishing show in June. Potentially, I'm going to be in Vegas again this year in November. And then March, I am going to be at the Irish publishing show again. So they're the three things at the moment, but
Mm.
always other things pop up.
Brilliant. Well,
Hopefully
thank
for
you
you.
so much. Yeah, excellent. We'll definitely see each other again at one of
Yes,
those. But thanks so much for coming on the podcast and for sharing all of those fantastic insights.
my pleasure. Thanks for having me.